Hello, good morning, and welcome to another episode of Psyched. I'm your host, Sule A. Joseph, a counseling psychologist by profession. Of course, you know, we are into season 4. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, season 4. And this season, we are tackling the hard-hitting topics. Some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug, and some topics that are too taboo for most people to talk about. Today's topic is one such topic. As a matter of fact, at one point, we can argue that this topic that we're discussing today was the inverse, and now it's flipped on its head. But before we get into this conversation that I am certain may have some calls for my head or for us to be cancelled, it's my favorite segment, Psyched to Know.
Psyched to Know, brought to you by Sule Joseph and Associates.
Emasculation from the societal perspective means to deprive of strength, vigor, or spirit. It is most commonly used to express men's masculine identity or the idea of their manhood being undermined. Researchers from the University of Arizona and Essex conducted a study in 2020 and found that when men feel as though their masculinity is threatened, their response would be to create distance in romantic relationships and downplay the relationship's overall importance, seemingly in an attempt to strengthen their masculinity by disavowing the need for intimacy with the opposite gender. This can cause negative consequences to relationships, including increasing the possibility for domestic violence.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Sule A. Joseph, and you're watching Psyched. Joining me this morning is an interesting guest. I'm not going to prolong it or drag it up because I'm certain you all know him. He's joining me for us to have a conversation about the emasculation of men in our society. Of course, I'm speaking none other than Mr. Rondell Fields.
Thanks for having me, my brother. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
thanks for coming. I'm certain if certain groups had their way.
I couldn't make it.
Right? Now, I'm going to start this off as controversy could possibly start a program.
Right.
And tell you all at home, in an earlier life, iteration of my functioning,
Right.
when I was younger, I did an interview where I was asked about rape culture in Trinidad. Okay. And of course, I said, you know, I disagreed with the idea that Trinidad had a rape culture, but that I agreed that the culture in Trinidad was a misogynistic one, heavily and highly sexualized, and so on and so on and so on and so on. Now, there were several women groups who disliked the fact that I said it did not have that. And what quickly pursued was that on social media, a petition for me to be raped was formed.
All right.
Right? so that I would learn about
What rape is.
Correct. Right? Now, jumping off of that, are we being ridiculous by saying that there might be agendas, if you want to put it that way, or a call for the emasculation of men, or the removal of the masculinity, of traditional masculine values from men?
Right.
Do you see it that way?
Would I say it's a blatant call? Out loud saying, hey, move it, get rid of it? No. What I would say, it's a subtle, a subliminal, and even more dangerous call because it is subtle and subliminal. So you see now removal a lot of practices. I mean, chivalry. We were talking about chivalry. Chivalry is one of those things. A man opening a door for a woman. A man wanting to pay for the first date. These things are now things that you must frown upon. You understand? Sometimes a man's, the normal gesture of being polite or respectful now being frowned upon. Or a man at some point in time, was he speaking to a woman or saying that, hey, you know, that underwear or that garment you have on has your underwear printing out. A woman has the right to expose her body as she sees fit because she's free to do so. So, I mean, I see a lot of these things people consider patriarchal or consider came from or consider to be misogynistic or men wanting to control women. So they may not say it outrightly that they're calling for a removal of male perception or male view or whatever. But to me, I think subliminally, we are saying or removing things that actually may not even have any male personal persuasion to what it is. Like chivalry is just being polite, it's just being respectful, it's just showing somebody that you care. When you put that down as something as patriarchal and something as negative and something that women should despise, to me, I think it comes across a bit deceitful and sending the wrong subliminal message.
But are you then having this conversation from a position of prejudice, all right? And a position of strength and power, because you sit in the seat of the person who is the privileged, right? And so now you, because of this privilege, you may not be necessarily seeing the damage that is being done to the female gender, right? And so they in turn now are feeling oppressed and have to fight for the freedom and the right to express and be who they are.
Do a poll. Ask the majority of women if they enjoy chivalry, if they enjoy a man treating them with some level of value and respect in the way that we were traditionally taught to do so, opening the doors for them, paying for the first date, asking them how they feel. You understand? These kind of things. You do a poll and ask women, shouldn't the woman, the majority of women be the litmus test? I guarantee you will find more women that enjoy these things than despise these things. Hence the reason there is the lessons or the cultures being taught or the theories now being offered to a woman. It's not being offered to us. It's being offered to the women who enjoy these things, that hear what you've been brainwashed by these men for years and they've controlled your thinking and you're not thinking practical and you shouldn't want anything and you should be an independent woman and whatever. I agree that a woman should be financially independent if that's what's best for her and whatever family circumstance she has. But none of us are independent, men included, even though we are financially independent.
So are you then, is this an attack on independent women, Mr. Fields? Are you saying therefore that these women out there who see themselves as independent women aren't indeed independent?
Of course, I am not attacking anyone, but I am telling you there is no independent person, man nor woman. None of us live in a silo by ourselves. We all need each other for every little aspect of things. So no matter if you're earning an income, you need somebody for emotional support. Sometimes you need somebody for moral support. Sometimes you need support in many different ways. Independence means you are an army to yourself. You don't need the assistance of anyone. And I think that is a myth, that is non-existent, and it's done nothing more than try to separate men and women from actually realizing how much they need each other.
Now, there's an often cry, particularly by single-parent women. I ain't need no man. Trinidad and Tobago, let us be real here. Those of you women who are out there, you know, who, if you have either echoed this sentiment or you've said it out loud, put your hand up. Be real. We know that, or you have a friend who said it.
Right.
But it's a sentiment that's echoed a lot by single mothers, particularly, who've had to go through the paces, who feel as though they can't depend on no man again because they've tried that and it just did not work out.
Right.
And so the stance they've now taken is, I don't need no man. I could do this on my own. I've been doing it on my own. I could do this on my own.
Right.
Fine. But what happens? What do you think then happens to the child, particularly the male child,
Right.
who is child to this parent, to this mother, who is hearing mother exclaim, she does not need a man?
Firstly, I had to correct that statement on the whole, that they love to say, or people love to say that I could do this on my own. I've been a single parent for most of my life. You could never do parenting on your own. You must have external support, whether it comes from the father of the child, whether it comes from, in instances when men are calling themselves the single parent, and the mother of the child, the grandparents, the aunties, the support system, whether it be the school, the daycare, or anything. You must have support from other persons. The thing is what do we consider support? Some people may consider finance to be support. So all right, I pay in these bills myself and I doing it all by myself. But there are many women who line up for maintenance and still say that I'm doing it all by myself. And she getting financial support in that end as well. So, I mean, I think people say a lot of things that aren't really their reality. But they say a lot of things because it's popular to say. There's things we've seen in my song shop there. Things you've been cultured to look at particular shows and you see the single mother and the single mother make certain pronouncements and then you relate with that person as a single mother and you say the same things yourself. But really and truly, you're talking from a position of really ignorance because you really must have support. Nobody could raise children on their own. And to take to the other point that you're saying as well, I often tell persons that it is important for a man to be involved in a child's life. If the father is absent, then you must have somebody, particularly with boys, who fills that gap, whether it's a brother, whether it's an uncle, whether if it's a football coach, a basketball coach. These are all persons lending support. You are still not doing it by yourself because these persons are now stepping up to fill the gap, to possibly guide or coach this young son that you have into some level of masculinity or masculine ways going forward. So it is critical, it is important, but another thing that is equally important, and we may be segueing a little bit because I understand people love to pounce on that ideology that if you're a single mother, you can't raise a child to be respectable. I believe if you're a single mother, you can't raise a child to be a man. But I believe if you are at any parent, whether single mother or single father, must have the competence to raise a child to be a respectable adult and can do so also.
But I want to take you back. I want to take you back to a statement you made where you said that a mother, so those mothers at home, those single parent mothers who are out there, they can't raise their boy children to be men. What do you mean by that?
They cannot, and I could give you evidence of that.
Sounds like fighting words to me.
Not fighting words to me. It sounds sensible to me.
All right.
If we're just dealing about the body, the anatomy, you're not a man. You've never experienced the feelings we've experienced. You haven't experienced changes when it comes to puberty, when it even comes to using the restroom. I remember dealing with our father years ago, that when he was finally given access to his child, we had to fight for him to get access. The mother was denying him access to the child. He had to teach his son to pee standing up because his mother could not have taught him to do that. So she cannot teach him to be a man. She could stand up and pee? No. So in simple instances like that, we ain't fighting nobody. We're making good common sense. She cannot teach him to be a man, but however, she can. Any parent, once they are displaying the right type of role modeling and being the right type of example to their children, could instill good moral value in them so that they don't grow up to be criminals and bandits. And a lot of single mothers use that as an excuse. Well, the father leave and gone. Or me and the father, he never know his father get killed in gunplay when his father was younger. And no. I think that single parenting on the whole, whether if it's single mother or single father, once that person who is in that space with that child is a good, sound role model, that child will be raised to be respectable. We even see it with some grandparents who take their children away from the mother and the father and raise the children in respectable manners.
Now, I usually say a version of that
Right.
to what you've said.
Right.
And so I'm in somewhat of agreement
Right.
that it is almost impossible for a mother to teach a boy how to be a man.
She can't.
So it is impossible. Now impossible for a mother to teach a boy how to be a man.
Correct.
Right? But a mother can teach a boy what the values a man should have. So what are some of the values a man should have? A mother can teach her son that. But there are some physical modeling behaviors
Right.
that a son has to see from his father.
Correct. I mean, and there's some things that obviously, some experiences he's going to have that is innate, it's natural, more so than just the body. I use the body as an experience, but any single mother will tell you, particularly when their son, after hitting puberty, after the voice begin to get deeper, after they begin to get stronger and begin to be bigger than them in size, they automatically, because of what's embedded in them, naturally, usurp authority over the mother, meaning when it comes to protection of the home. I've heard many young children that I have spoken to say that they would have preferred or prefer when they stay at their father's home, when they go to visit. Because even the boys are talking about, they are allowed the opportunity to feel like a child. And I asked one young man what he meant by that. He said, when I am home and the rat and the cockroach and the anything flying inside or the bandit or whatever, I need to protect mommy. But when I buy daddy, I could rock back because daddy go on before I could get up.
Right.
So it gives the child a sense of knowing that there's a protecting arm around there. The child is less anxious, less depressed sometimes because they know a certain authority possibly of a man when they're still yet a boy.
So then you're saying men still have a role.
Of course, men have a role. And no matter how we try to make it sound misogynistic or whatever, because of the way we are built naturally, we naturally have the body that protects, the build of a body that protects. And you see it many times, even in the workforce when we're talking about equality and these things. And I say, yes, I support these things. But many times we see fights on the promenade and it have 2 female police officers, 3 and 4 big men fighting. And they cannot intervene to break that fight despite they are police officers. Right. They need to get males to come and intervene. So we have to be practical and realistic about certain things. I mean, we were built a particular way for whatever reason. I mean, so that we could provide our role and function as men and women and cohabit in the best way in this world. And we have to appreciate that.
And I hear that point, but I want to counter with this final point.
No problem.
I want to counter with this point. What about for persons who argue that this whole concept, first of all, if we accept the concept of men now being emasculated, we have to accept the concept of masculinity and what a man is in the first place. And as many persons will now argue that the whole concept and construct of manhood and masculinity and so on is a false concept. And so the whole idea is that it's fluid. There's a concept now of fluidity, and that anybody can choose. So somebody can choose to be masculine or be male, right? And then represent the characteristics, because I'm assuming here that masculinity comes with characteristics, right. And anybody can take on those characteristics. So now, are they as a, I don't want to use the word authentic, but would they fit into your categorization of meeting the requisite or the requirements for a child to have a male in their lives? Let's say somebody who's fluid. Somebody's fluid now accepts the role of male, masculine, they fulfilling the masculine roles. Can that be enough?
I mean, just any bits of the things that we spoke about with masculinity, there are some rules that even biologically you cannot assume. We just use the perfect example of going to the restroom. You understand? We just use another emotional example about automatically usurping authority. Not because you think that you've studied a particular role to perform. It means you're going to get that innate feeling to perform that role when you need to perform it. It's still something very natural. You understand? So, I mean, it's so confusing, because we have allowed so many things to become right that we no longer know what is right, what is wrong, And that is the issue. So we've confused ourselves. We've had issues, and to what benefit, to what gain? No one still has explained to me what is the value of the removal of some of these things. Removal of things like chivalry, or removal of the ideology of the man saying, well, hey, I am the one that protects the home. Why are we changing it? What is the value of changing it? By the man saying he's a protector of the home means what? That he doesn't love or care for the woman? If he's protecting the home, it's actually for the benefit of the woman and the children. So before you even go into all these discussions as if masculinity should even be considered masculinity, or if masculinity is wrong, or if masculinity is toxic, we still have to prove the point that it's caused problems and it's destroyed the society. Is it really masculinity? Because I could think of the 1960s and 1950s when masculine black men had to sit down in the back of the bus, while female white women sat to the front of the bus, had full access to all washrooms, had full access to all restaurants, where many of the so-called African, who are supposed to be dominant because they are masculine and male, had no access. So is it really true that because you were masculine because we love to quote the old days, back in the old days, men was this, men was that. Well, it's really not true. Back in the old days, there were a group of men, because of their race and the color of their skin, African, Indian, any colored person, that had less right to life, or the enjoyment of their life and right to live, than a percentage of women because of the color of their skin. So long and short of the story, I'm not sure if we could really use the old days of what the representation of masculinity was to show that there was this dominance. There was a percentage and a particular type of man that had dominance over every living being in the society. Not all of them.
Finally inclusive. Have we, because we're running out of time,
You're right.
have we as a society, as we continue to grow and learn, if we learn from our mistakes, there are some things that we did, such as removing or not allowing women to vote originally, some things that are basic human right infringements, right? Some basic human right infringements that we perpetrate against another gender, right? And the female gender I'm speaking about here.
Right.
So there are some clear-cut issues that we've been evolving and moving past. But do you think, as we continue to evolve as a society, that biological males, manhood, according to Andrew Tate, right, is under attack and continues to be under attack?
I think it is. And it's by who it's under attack. And I don't want to miss that point. And I agree with you. There was a time when that women couldn't do certain things. But we cannot miss the point that at that time when certain women couldn't do certain things, there were races of men and women that were not allowed to do it also. So if we are really looking to find a solution to the problem, was our solution then really gender that caused this level of bias and unfairness and hate upon society? You get my point? Was it really because it were males? Because there were other males, a mass majority of males, suffering at the hands of this bias also. So I don't want us to miss that point. And yes, now it's being put forward or projected as though it was every man. And every man was against women. And every man had rights and women had none. When really and truly that has never been true. That has never been true from the foundation. Every man didn't have these rights. Every man didn't have these powers. Every man didn't have these opportunities to work in banks and do these things. There was a minority that created a narrative and destroyed the majority. And I'm coming back to the point now, where today we are finding ourselves yet again another minority who have now created a narrative, confuse the history, and promoting that narrative now to confuse the majority to have their way again. You understand where I'm coming from with that?
So In other words, because we move from, I heard minority, majority, confused,
Correct.
majority, so to simplify this, to say this.
There is a powerful minority. There was a powerful minority in those days that were comprised of majority men, but also women that had that power because of their race, basically, right?
And now you're saying the same thing
I
is
am
occurring
correct, that control the majority, but that are now a minority again that has evolved, that is now again selling another narrative, saying it was men that had done all this, men all together had done all this, when it was a minority that created that narrative that destroyed the society then, and are creating a new narrative that is putting women against men generally. Whether you're a woman of color or whether you're a Caucasian woman, it's women against men now. It's just been broadened across the board without anybody truly analyzing the history of what took place. If you sit back and look at the history, you'll ask yourself these questions. You understand?
Well, then
the feminism rant was...
Who is it? As I say, feminism. So
right.
who's the group?
Well, the feminism rant was very, very active during the same time you're talking about, In the 1970s, 1960s, it was white women fighting against the very powerful white men who didn't have them doing anything. It wasn't for the liberation of black women or Indian women or other women who were in the society as well. It was they not being a part of the pie. So for us to truly fix this, we need to remove gender and treat with everybody on their own merit. If somebody is at a certain level, has achieved a certain amount, whether it be academically, has fit the required skill set for a particular job or to be elevated to a particular place on a particular board or whatever, you hold them at their own personal merit. Their gender should not help them. Their gender shouldn't be a disadvantage against them. And that is how we need to start to look at it today. And until we do that, we will never find balance. We will never find equity.
So do you feel as though, in closing, do you feel as though, as you mentioned it just now, that sometimes gender plays a heavy role, and perhaps where we are seeing a lot more women in roles of leadership, we just have had our second female president installed, and we're seeing a lot more women in roles. Do you feel as though now, to try to counteract all of these years, maybe, I don't know, whatever issues of perceived oppression or whatever that women would have pursued, that do you feel as though there's now a gender bias to positioning? Because I heard you mention persons should be given jobs based on merit and not necessarily gender.
Of course.
So do you feel as though there's a gender bias towards?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a gender bias, but I feel it's playing up to the narrative, fulfilling the narrative that at this particular point in time, for us to make it appear this particular way, this is how it needs to go. We need to push forward. But then we have to be careful when we're doing that. We're not saying that there aren't women that walked up the ladder to get to there. And I mean, of course, if a woman has made that step, of course you advance her, you promote her, you support her, particularly if we are identifying that there really weren't women there before. But we still have to be careful at the end of the day that we're not now tipping the scales on the next side. Just because, as you rightfully say, well, it was man all the time, so even though this man is most competent for this position, we're going to put a woman because it had 100 men and it had only 3 women. How sensible is that? Particularly in the positions you just said to fill. Prime Minister, Police Commissioner, President. We need the persons who are best fitted. Their gender shouldn't matter. Their race shouldn't matter. Their political preference shouldn't matter. And it is because we use our diversities to divide is why we always use these points as pivotal points to pitch our agendas. Because it's easy to separate us if we talk about man hating woman, woman hating man. If we talk about East Indian hating African, if African over East Indian, you understand? PNM over UNC, UNC over PNM. If we use those points to get the attention of the masses, so it's easy for people to use those points to put forward in the society. But we have to realize that we have to take everybody on their own merit. Male, whether you're, as I said, African, Indian, male, female, or whatever your political preference or religious basis.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Sears.
Thanks for having me.
Now, in closing, quickly, if you were just to leave a sentence, one sentence for people at home that you want them to leave with. So those of you at home who are listening, listen carefully as you are left with a message. One message you just want the persons at home to leave with.
It's as we've been saying all the time. Let us learn to live together. Let us learn to value each other for our diversity. I think we're so blessed to be a part of a nation that is so diversified, where we have different culture, we have different food, we have different holidays because of this diversity. Let us find a way to live in unison and actually use those diversities as an advantage, opposed to letting persons who may have the platform to do so divide us with our diversity.
All right, excellent. So thank you all at home. That was an excellent message.
I appreciate that, man.
Right? In closing, guys, let's remember to keep it peaceful. I don't believe it's a war between genders. I think, as Mr. Seal said, remember, let's take gender out of the equation and put the best person for the job. Let's remember that we still have to live together. We need the women and we need the men. And we're coming together is how we continue to build our society in having respect for each other on the same level. All right? So thank you all for being with me here today. Remember, next week, please God, same time, same place, right here on WESN, the family. Stay psyched.